So I chose to join Al-Anon, which is free nationwide. You can do it virtually, in person. Al-Anon is like the groups for families of those that are struggling with substance use and mental health. Al-Anon was a savior for me, a wonderful organization that I could connect with other people going through the same thing about their sister, brother, or father, loved one, cousin, wife, husband. So we all connect weekly. It's totally anonymous. And you share and you hear about the boundary setting. Boundary setting is so important.
The lovely Allison Rush. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm good. It's amazing it's taken us this long to do this.
I know. The last time I think I saw you guys, we were at Castle BAM with BAM and Brandon up in Pennsylvania 2 years ago.
It's been a long time.
A long time. I know. I'm so thrilled to be a part of this. So thank you for having me.
Of course. I mean, giving a little more background, you've worked in and with treatment facilities for so long that I know so much knowledge has been acquired. I really want to start with this. Dawned on me last night. I couldn't sleep. And I was like, I want to start with asking Allison about gratitude and how much she's learned about gratitude through the work that you've done. I mean, because you've seen people at their lowest turn their life around, i.e. a Brandon Novak.
Absolutely. Yeah. Gratitude. That's a good starting point. So over the last 9 years, I've dedicated my life to substance abuse and mental health and helping people find their way into treatment, good treatment, and also working with the media in my role as public relations and communications in various facilities, working to destigmatize the plagued industry, right? And you've got people that are suffering and they just feel like outcasts. They already feel like they want to crawl out of their skin. And then you've got society just constantly judging them. So my mission was to work on eradicating that and working with the media to get as many stories as I could out there. So the gratitude for me to be able to do that and work with families and see how far they've come, it's so fulfilling. It's so fulfilling.
What are some of the biggest moments for you? Maybe was there any that occurred where it even helped you reframe your life and how you saw yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So the interesting thing for me was I started in entertainment. I was at the Willie Morris Agency back in the day. I worked in Latin music in Miami, 2006. I got my start. So I was doing a lot of celebrity events, red carpet events, press kit compilation, music deals, endorsements, and I was learning from some of the best in the industry. I was never truly fulfilled. And then at that time, I had a close family member get sick. And then the universe just brought me into behavioral healthcare. So I was doing hospitality and entertainment, and then I never looked back. I knew that was my calling. And I also knew professionally that good economy, bad economy, there was always going to be a need for healthcare. So it was a good career move. Sure. And then the chain of events that were happening in my life, I saw someone I loved struggle. And I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what to do. And then as I started working in the field, I started to gain the resources and meeting the right people and going to different conventions and listening in on sessions and panel discussions. I've probably been to over 100 nationwide conferences and just learning from the leaders in our field and the people that have seen this time and time again, the doctors, the providers, and just taking everything I could, reading every piece of literature to help somebody that I know personally struggle. And if I wasn't in this field, I don't know if I would have been able to have those resources or scholarships or treatment. So I owe so much gratitude to the people that have helped me and all the resources I've learned along the way. It wasn't easy. Nothing is in this. And as we know, I mean, mental health and addiction takes the entire family hostage. And it affects everyone from such a granular level to catastrophic proportions because everything is affected. Job, your home, family life. It's just like a bomb going off. And until we have better access and better quality care, we can't fix this until we treat it. And then people also need to know they shouldn't feel the stigma of getting help. So it's half the battle of just admitting you have an issue and feeling comfortable sharing that with someone, and then making the choice to go and get help. Yeah. So it's a lot on the person struggling and the family.
From your perspective, do you think it's a greater challenge for men or women to reach out and ask for that help? Because the interesting thing, the reason I ask that is, as you know, I do 2 podcasts in this area, one primarily addiction and this mental health and addiction. And the vast majority of listeners are men. And I don't know if that's just because more men listen to podcasts or what it is, because I really worry about our women in this country. We saw it during the pandemic. The statistics for problem drinking for women, especially married women, skyrocketed.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great question. So men and women are equally affected by addiction. But I feel like for a man, there is a little bit of a pressure, right, with society, a pressure to perform in the workforce, a pressure to be the man of the household, a pressure to be the breadwinner. I feel like there's a lot of pressure society has put on men in general, even though the family dynamic has shifted over the last half century. Women are working, they're in the workforce, they're the mom, and they can be at work, corporate America. We've seen that with women leaders. But I feel like men, there is still more pressure. And it might be harder for men to reach out and get professional help. It's also culturally, you know.
Sure.
I know, like for me, I have a big Italian family and my dad's side. And, you know, it was kind of like back in the day, you have a problem, you know, tough it out. You're fine. Like right. Snap out of it. You don't go to therapy, you know. And we start to see this shift in the cultural paradigm that men, it's okay to ask for help and it's okay, you know. So for those listening, I think it's manly when you call for help and you get professional help. You know, you're not a therapist. You don't know what you need. You don't know the coping skills, the family dynamic, the education that comes with it. And I think it's great that we're seeing more and more men enter treatment. And just statistically speaking, like you mentioned, I've been in 2 or 3 pretty big centers and I've seen the data. We typically see the male client, it's male skewed that comes in. I would say maybe 60-40, more or less, all ages, but typically it's that failure to launch age, that 21 to 34, young guy, mostly experiencing alcohol abuse. But we've seen a huge rise in heroin, huge rise in cocaine and fentanyl, but it's typically male skewed who enter treatment. And typically the mother of the household or the wife or the spouse is researching and looking to make those healthcare decisions. So we're seeing, you know, a lot of people affected by this, but obviously it's more skewed towards male. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy to see that so many people are still afraid to get help, and there's still that society pressure.
Yeah, you know, one of the things when we were having I think it was a phone conversation we had that, boy, you about brought me to tears, but I didn't ask you in that call because I went into ultimate empathy mode was, as you mentioned, you know, with having a loved one that has greatly struggled, how then, because it does take the toll, what did you do for you to make sure you were in a good place? Because you know, it's why they tell us to put our mask on first, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that was tough for me. I saw someone I loved struggle so bad in every way, shape, and form. This person was going off the rails, up and down, bipolar disorder. That's what the person was diagnosed with. And in and out of jail, in and out of hospitals, going through highs and lows. And just to give people background on bipolar disorder, it is the most complicated brain disease. And there's really nothing you can do to ever cure it, but you can maintain it. There is prescription medication coupled with therapy. Absolutely have to be treated for it. And bipolar, it comes with various symptoms. There's grandiosity, there's this hyposexuality, feeling that they are invincible. So there's a lot of high-risk behaviors, promiscuity, gambling, shopping, kind of feeling detached and disassociated with real life thinking that they can do as they please with no consequences. And it's very, very dangerous. That kind of behavior is highs and lows. So they can have manic depressive symptoms, real low, mania, hyper speech, and just very irritable and aggravated. And so that's where there's run-ins with the law, and there's that side to it. And then there's highs. They can feel wonderful, and they can have rapid speech and get excited about something. And it's just so devastating to see that. And this person was struggling for many years. A couple years were fine, and then boom, one trigger could be, some sort of trauma trigger. And then for about a year of just mania up and down, and then 3 years, totally fine. We ended up giving this person lithium. That was the only thing that worked because they kept failing out of medications. There's a lot of stuff on the market these days. There's psychedelics people are exploring, TMS and things like that. I say, work with your doctor, choose the best thing for you. That's what I was dealing with. And then to answer your question about what was I doing for my mental health, it was hard because, you love somebody and you are up all hours of the night. We've all been there. We know what it's like. And it's just devastating because you can't control that person's life. Yeah. So I chose to join Al-Anon, which is free nationwide. You can do it virtually, in person. Al-Anon is like the groups for families of those that are struggling with substance use and mental health. Al-Anon was a savior for me, a wonderful organization that I could connect with other people going through the same thing about their sister or brother or father, loved one, cousin, wife, husband. So we all connect weekly. It's totally anonymous, and you share and you hear about the boundary setting. Boundaries setting is so important, and enabling someone time and time again has to stop. It took me a while, but once I did it and I realized I was not in control of their life, I have to give it to God. And I just gave everything to God and my higher power. And I said, just every day, one day at a time, help me make the right choice for my own health. And then I could be the healthiest version of myself to give this person my love and my care, because I can't do it. And I always say, you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to be whole within yourself first. Like putting the mask on first. Exactly. And until you do that and realize you cannot control the outcome, you just have to pray for them and have strong, healthy boundaries. Your life will be so much better in managing the symptoms of that.
Well, I think one of the beautiful things that I don't know if Bill W. and Dr. Bob had planned out, but writers of Alcoholics Anonymous book, by the way, for those who didn't, they're like, who are you talking about? The beautiful thing, because when my dad, and I don't remember if we've talked about this, but when he got treatment, there was nothing with the family. So then when he was plugged back in, and I think I was about 20, 21, it screwed me up, because all of a sudden dad wanted to be dad that had never been dad to me in that capacity. We never had that butting heads moment that the teenage son has or any of that shit. And so we did, and it really kind of threw me for a loop. So I think it's so important what you're sharing, because we all need a sense of community. And the 12 steps, I've said to many people, if we could have it where we plugged it in, especially like high school age, boy, society would benefit a lot from it, because there's just so many great fundamentals to the 12 steps that I just didn't have as a foundation in life. And primarily one of the things that you said, boundaries. I didn't know what a boundary was, because I wanted everyone to love me. And so I'm doing all those things, and this is how you care, not realizing that I was the ultimate manipulator by being a people pleaser.
Exactly. It's a coping mechanism. It's how we want to be seen. It's from feeling loss and abandonment, and the way that we want to be seen is through attachment and people pleasing and not having those boundaries. And it takes a while. It's kind of, you build a stoicism with it, and you gain wisdom from it, but only so many years later, right? It would have been effective younger, but we learn later in life. But I learned, the steps were so paramount to my own recovery, and Al-Anon provided that platform. And the steps are great. I think it's a universal thing to apply to anyone's life. And you also need to forgive yourself, and you need to forgive those that perpetrated against you. So whether, I work with so many clients that experience this. A lot of the times, aside from genetics, in the environment they were raised in, maybe there was molestation and abuse and physical abuse. It's terrible what somebody has to go through. And so for those that had suffered, I'm not going to say victims, I'm going to say as survivors of that, I truly feel, because the innocence and that young vulnerability and being taken advantage, I can only imagine. And then of course, later in life, developing mental health disorders and substance use disorders. But if they only could forgive themselves that it's not them who did that they were violated. And it's just a whole other world that they can live in and live their life. And once they can forgive themselves and forgive those that perpetrated, and I always come from the place of, you know what, you have to accept the way people are. Unfortunately, there are bad people in this world. And once you can accept that and pray for them, pray for their souls, and forgive yourself for feeling any kind of guilt or shame about it, and hiding something. And maybe people didn't believe you, or maybe, it was hard. I mean, I know a girl, this has happened to her in a church setting for decades. It's sad, but you know what? You can change your life, and you can forgive yourself, and just that weight off your shoulders. Don't you want to just forgive and not hold that toxicity in? Even the people that did you wrong and did terrible things, they need God, they need 12 steps, they need Al-Anon. And it's like, that is just going to give you an open heart, open mind to move on with your life. And so many people stop drinking once they realize, I'm in control of my life. I don't need to ever get an apology from someone who perpetrated against me, because do you really need that? Do you really need to give them the power to tell them, I did this to you? You already know that. So for a lot of the people that I work with and the families, there's a lot of deep-seated trauma from childhood and beyond. And we just have to do better as parents, raising our kids right, watching everywhere they go and making sure that they're not with strangers. It's a different time than it was 20 years ago. We were so trusting then. And now it's like we lock our doors. My mom used to keep their door open, and we don't do that anymore, and it's just a different time. We have to be careful. So anyway, this whole long-winded thing about trauma, a whole other tangent. I'm just thinking, because I just worked with 3 survivors of this. And Al-Anon and AA saved them, changed their life, the 12 steps, particularly because of the trauma and the deep-seated abuse and a deep-rooted abuse. And I do believe that it can help anyone if they just be open-minded about it. You don't have to commit, just be open-minded.
And I think we have to, because if we're not, and we don't come with an open mind and accept that change is necessary, we're not going to be able to break the victim mentality. And the victim mentality is just, I mean, I see it constantly. I went through it. I lived in it. It was my ultimate excuse to continue to booze and drink, and the crappy behavior, the dangerous behavior that went along with it. But I still laugh and get appalled at myself. Like, I remember more instances like, oh my God, what the hell was wrong with me? But that breaking of the victim mentality, and I had to do that within my own life, taking a look at my my childhood. And granted, my parents are amazing. My mom was the ultimate mama bear. Would never knowingly let anything happen, but there wasn't a lot of emotional conversations in the house either. But I've been fortunate. I've gotten the apologies from my parents, especially my dad. But you're right. I didn't need it to break the victim mentality. We did that so that we could build a relationship, he and I now, which we're close now. But that victim mentality, man, that will take a person down and keep them from ever achieving anything with life.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell me a little more about Allison here. Let's get into you. We got a little fired up together. And you brought this topic. I wasn't sure you'd want to talk about it, but we've had a famous individual with some anti-Semitic statements in the press, and we've had conversations. It's
It's It's a good topic. It's trending, it's relevant today. Mental health, obviously. And Kanye West, as most people know him, and now he's Ye. I was following this story for a long time, and I was always a fan of Kanye. When he dropped College Dropout, I was in college. He came to Gainesville, where I went to school, went to his concert. I thought he was so talented, and he really is a creative genius, but not so much with words, right? But I think with Kanye, I chose to look at it in a different light than most people, right? Yes, I was angry with some of the anti-Semitic remarks. My mom's side's Jewish, I'm Jewish, and that did offend me. But I understand Kanye. Not many people do.
Really?
I'm empathic to him, and I'll tell you why. Kanye has been very outspoken about him suffering from bipolar. We've seen the symptoms, right? The grandiosity, the disassociation with reality. It's what he thinks his reality versus consensus. I saw the Cuomo interview and the Tucker Carlson interview. And I was trying to analyze Kanye so people can just understand the perspective, right? I'm not giving him a pass for what he said, but I also am, right? So let me explain. Kanye, if you think about it, he's been in the limelight for over 2 decades. So everything he's been going through has been exacerbated by fame. And he can't, he's not struggling in private. He's not getting help in private. He's doing all of this in the public eye. So on top of that, and then him having, I know there was like a rough relationship with the father and his mother, Donda. And she was his everything, right? Saw the documentary. And then what happens to her? She dies, I think maybe a decade ago, I'm not sure when. Mm-hmm. She dies during having plastic surgery. She dies of vanity. I mean, if you think about it, here's a guy who is so close to his mother, came from nothing, fought so hard to get where he is today, never gave up, loses his mother, and he's got all of this money and fame. And then what does he do? He marries into one of the most, I want to say like most vain families, but a very vain family, although no hate though, love the Kardashians. I'm just saying.
I'm going to give you that because
I'm saying the perspective, right? All the
yes.
money and fame and the makeup and the deals, and not that it's a bad thing, but it's vanity if you look at it in a different light, right?
Yes.
And that's what his mother died of. And then he marries into this family, and he's just got an identity crisis going on. And it's got to be a lot for him. So the bipolar that he's struggling from, I'm not surprised he didn't crack soon enough.
Sure.
So I get it. He's going to have rampant speech and feeling invincible and all those symptoms, all of the behaviors that we see. That's bipolar. That is manic. And he's going through manic episodes. And it's so sad to see him because I get him, I'm empathic to that. I totally understand it. And my job, I guess, in my role now is to help families struggling to be a little bit more understanding than trying to be understood, be empathic, and try to put yourself as best as you can in their shoes. I can only imagine the pain he's going through. I can only imagine all of the handlers and the yes people all around him and worrying about his every move. It's hard for him to get help in private when you have cameras all over you all the time. And you've lost part of your family. You're going through this divorce. Like, I'm not making excuses for the guy, but when you put anti-Semitic remarks like that out there, even if you think they're not, and they are, it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous because he's got so many role models and millions of followers. So to see that, I don't think he may have malintentions, but the mania, I get it. I get the mania, and there could be triggers. It could be, trauma. And he went through a terrible accident as well. I mean, there's so much PTSD this man has lived through. I get it, Kanye. Listen, if you're listening, I'll be your life coach. I totally get you. I get you. I feel for you. I see people like you every day. Maybe not the fame and the money, but they're everyday people that struggle with bipolar. And it doesn't matter how famous you are, how rich you are. When you have that disease of the mind, you can't pay your way out of it. It's sad. Like, you can get the best treatment that money has to buy, but you have to do the work. You have to constantly fight every day. People I know just want to literally take their lives and just, they're like crawling out of their skin.
Yeah.
So to hear when people tell me what it's like to have bipolar, and then of course from a family perspective, I see that, it's just heartbreaking. So I'm an advocate for people with mental health. I do not agree with Kanye's remarks, but I know where they're coming from. I get his anger at people, and it may not have anything to do with the Jewish people. It's just where he was at the time and place, and that person just so happened to be. I don't know, but he's got to do better. There's no excuse. You've got to get help, and you've got to get help now, because he's going to either end up in jail or a hospital, or God forbid worse. Yeah. And he's got to get the right help for his symptoms and his mania. It's sad.
It is. And I applaud you for having the empathy, because I would imagine that sometimes it's hard not to take this stuff personal, but it's so important in life as a tool to not take things personal.
I was angry too, though. Like, I was like, Adidas better drop this man, and then I was like, you know what? I feel for him. I'm sorry that he's going through this. Right. It's not an excuse what he said. I just think he's ignorant in that sense. He doesn't know better, or maybe he does. I don't, but I just feel like it's not coming from a mean place. He's just expressing that grandiosity. Like, I'm Kanye and nothing can touch me. And that's bipolar. That is saying you're invincible. Adidas can't drop me. Well, guess what? You learn consequences in life, whether you think it's anti-Semitic or not, whether you think you're not manic or not, or you're okay or not, like, you're going to have to deal with the consequences. And Adidas slow walked their decision, but they made one. Sure. Along with Balenciaga and other well-known brands. And I'm surprised it took this long.
Let me ask you that, though, as a lady that I know you work contracts, so I'm going to guess, there's obviously the morality clause. Don't you think a lot of that, my opinion, I saw people all over social media, Twitter, and I just simply put, there is a due process of law that they have to go, okay, we can button up this morality clause and thus terminate this contract. Don't you think there was probably a bit of time that they had to take that process?
Yeah. I mean, I look at it both. I look at it both ways. Like, are there internal protocols that need to be had, and people coming together from all different offices around the world and really assessing this major financial situation? Of course, their stocks have gone down, and, it affects everyone. But he was rambling on about this stuff months before this. So taking that stand early enough maybe would have helped them. But regardless, and I always tell people this as a PR professional, always have a crisis communications plan. Adidas clearly did not. They did not. And if they did, they were dragging their feet on it, and they slow walked it. They didn't even slow walk it. They slow crawled it. Right. They just, and brands need to start standing up to that. But then again, like I said, you've got someone who's very, very sick mentally. Yeah. So it's very problematic. It's hard for brands, when you align with a celebrity, you do an endorsement deal. That's the risk you take. Luckily for these big corporations and have good attorneys, there's stipulations in their contracts that, give them the right of way to back out of a deal if one of their endorsers, or endorsees, I should say, like Kanye or Ye, become manic or have episodes or say anti-Semitic remarks or spew hate speech. They can get out of that because of the reputation, the damage, and things like that. But even just from like a morality standpoint, it's like, are you just going to wait until it gets really bad? Because that's what they did. I mean, they slow walked it, and no organization should take that long. And you can't align yourselves with people that are literally a ticking time bomb. That's what you get.
Slow rolling it just makes me think of the government and the fentanyl crisis. Hey, not making light of the people that got COVID and lost their life, but I don't know, government. But stats are showing over 100,000 between the age of 16 and 43 right now that we're losing from overdose. We might want to start addressing this a little bit better.
Well, I hear in different news sources, the number one cause of death right now amongst 18 to 25. Yeah. Due to so many factors, which we know, and that would take another whole session to go into that. But it is really, the numbers are sobering. I will say this, I not merely some statistics, but they're from 2021. I don't think they've aggregated the data yet. They're for 2020. They haven't obviously aggregated the data for 2021. And obviously we're not through 2022 yet, but 1 in 5 people experience a mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
1 in 20 experience a serious mental illness. So like schizophrenia, bipolar, schizoaffective disorders. 1 in 15 experience both substance use and mental health disorder. And 12 million people in the US have had serious thoughts of suicide. So we have about 330 million people in the US. That's roughly 1 in 20. And that's pretty crazy to know 1 in 20 people had suicidal ideations, thought about it. So it's, you look at 19 of your closest friends and family and they're good. Like, maybe it's you, right? No, but I hope it's nobody,
It is me.
I mean, right? It's us. But we can do something about it, right? There are resources, and that's kind of, you asked about me, truly what I want to do in the life I have, this beautiful life that I don't want to take for granted, and that every day I try to find joy in life, even though we're living in really tough times and very uncharted territory, right? Just be compassionate, educate yourself, learn from the leaders in the field, read books, psychiatry books. I try to educate myself so I could be equipped to help somebody. I can't obviously give medical advice, but I can say, look, in my situation, this is what I did and help me. Right. And just be a shoulder for people and help them try to find credible and reputable resources. So part of what I've done in the last almost decade is I started treatment centers. I do their branding. I help with getting them going from small enterprise to large. One of the centers I had left, there was about 100 employees when I started, left 1,500 employees. Like, I've seen the growth, steady growth, and they've done a lot of things right. And some of those things I tell people is strong clinical program, don't cut corners. You want to make sure that if you're looking for treatment for your loved one, ask yourself, which is the best place for me, and how do I go about finding that? You can go online and look. Obviously, that's where we get most of our information on Google, but do yourself a favor and ask up to see their licensure. You can request a copy. I know in Florida we have DCF and there's Health and Human Services in other states. Ask to find their licensure, find out who their medical director is. So many people go to these centers and there's a lot of scam out there. And so one of the things I tell families is make sure that they're accredited. Joint Commission holds them to a higher standard. They look at everything from background checks with HR, making sure that all of their therapists are licensed and not expired licensure, that there's no discrepancies or behavioral issues with the board, the state board. You also want to make sure that that person is having a thorough assessment and nothing is missed, and that that program is the right fit. So if you, let's say, are experiencing a psychotic episode, a residential treatment center may not be acute enough. You might have to go to a hospital setting that is unfortunately locked down, but usually it's a 72-hour hold. I know in Florida it's the Baker Act. And then, after that, where do they go? They need to have a transition plan. Usually it's residential inpatient care. They have to have a mental health license to treat a primary diagnosis. Most centers don't have that. Right. So it's a mental health primary licensure. If you go to a substance use center and your loved one is experiencing both mental health and substance, then dual diagnosis is the most appropriate program. You want to make sure that that center can do that. And then if it's just mental health and they're not exhibiting any signs of substance abuse or any addiction, it's just strictly mental health, there are separate centers for that, which I highly recommend to keep it separate. Some places I've heard horror stories. They mix the addiction patients with mental health. The group sessions are not properly regulated. The doctors don't see them once a week. A medical doctor, a psychiatrist, not psychologist or intern or therapist. So, it just breaks my heart to see so many people in this business for money. But I do believe that there are a lot of good providers out there that are in this for the right reasons. And I'm trying to guide those families as to what I'm doing today.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we saw it with Body Brokers, the film. I don't know if you've seen it, but
I haven't seen it, but
you lived it though.
I love Frank Grillo. He's the best. Great actor. But yeah, I lived it. And for many years I've seen it, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it's just absolutely heartbreaking that those that are in their ultimate state of need, and I don't just mean the individual, but the family, that it's taken advantage of. Looking back, thinking about my dad, first place I can think of was Betty Ford Center that he went to and was okay, but he was dual diagnosed because he needed to confront sexual addiction as well. So he went somewhere else. It was pretty good. And then the final place he went was good for him because it was a little, as he put, it's really hippy dippy do here. But for him, it was good because it got him in touch with something that wasn't ever present in his life, to be a little more grounded, connected with nature, and understanding of certain things. And so that was really beneficial. But it's sad to see, now I work with a nonprofit, and the founder, he has a treatment facility. And so where we're at, we're seeing it all the time with these places that we know a multitude of people are getting scammed. And it's heart-wrenching when these people, they just, your loved ones, we just don't want them to die. Yeah. We want them to have a chance to get better. That's the thing. We just want a chance for them to get better. All I wanted was a chance to get better.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm in this role where I've seen a lot, and I know the good players and I know the bad players, and I stay far away from them. And karma never loses an address. At some point, if you're not doing the right thing, the right thing will be done to you. And I truly believe that. And if you do the right thing, the money will come. So the people that want to make a living, that's okay. You can run a business, you can open up a center, but don't ever lose yourself in the money. Don't ever lose yourself in cutting corners. Do the right thing, build up your name. You only have your reputation. I've built brands, and you only have your reputation. What's the cost? What are you going to put a price on your name? Invest in good PR. Hire somebody that knows what they're talking about. hire people that, that work for the greater good of your clients, and that really are into the data. Outcome-based studies is so important. That's why most centers that I have worked with have a family or alumni program. Good. And so if you're a family and you're trying to navigate these deep, scary waters of treatment, right? So many ads thrown at you, you're looking online, you don't know what to do. What I would say is, on top of what I previously mentioned of asking for licensure, asking for a schedule, who does my loved one see on a weekly basis? Is there a medical director? Who are they? How often are they seen and treated? What do you recommend as the treatment protocol? Because sometimes medications aren't for everyone. There's medication assisted treatment. So there's so many different areas, and you just have to make sure that that center is equipped to handle that level of care, that criteria that patient has met. And I've seen centers that just can't handle it, or they're not equipped, but they'll just, hey, it's another admit, it's more insurance money. That is so wrong. And I'm telling you, I've seen it time and time again. It just has to stop. So until these providers start doing the right thing, families can be rest assured, but they've got to be on the defense. They've got to be weary. They should ask so many questions, get the licensure. And even with interventions, it's like, who do you go to? Because even interventionists can be, you got to be careful with those people out there, and they get kickbacks from centers. So a lot of that has died down. There's been a lot of task force, and a big crackdown in Florida for sure. We've made strides. We've eradicated a lot of the bad players, but there's still bad players. Yeah. And wherever there's money, there's fraud and insurance billing. So you just have to be on the defense. You have to really know who has your best interest. And to do that is to do research on the facility, look at the reviews, talk to people. Do they have a strong family program? Do they have a good alumni program? And things like that. And it's tough. I mean, look, people ask me all the time, well, how do you define success, right? How do you define success at your treatment center? We can look at the numbers all day, and with alumni, we can call them a week out, 2 weeks out, a month out, 6 months out. Hey, how you doing? You still sober? You're going to our recovery events, our recovery oriented events. And We'd love to have you at our next speaking session. And some of them drop off. A lot of them relapse. The recidivism rate is high. We know this. So any center that tells you it's more than 50, we have more than 50% sober, they're lying. You know,
we guarantee recovery.
Right. That's just,
sure.
Or we have a cure for recovery. That's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. And I don't necessarily, so how to define success is if you are an addict and you relapse and you get back up, I think that's success because relapsing is part of the journey. And the more that you are dedicated to getting back up, you still learn everything in treatment. You still know coping skills. You still can apply that. You have still done time. It's not lost time. You could be 10 years sober and relapse. That still counts for something. You just got to get back up. What went wrong? What happened? What triggered you? What stressor, something in life that maybe had enabled you, and just relearn it and go back. And I think that's a beautiful thing to get back up and go. And I think that is still success because you're still learning those coping skills you learned in treatment. Now for the family, what's success is that the family may have a loved one going through relapse, but every time that relapse gets a little bit easier in the sense that they know boundary setting and healthy coping skills, and they're in Al-Anon groups and they have resources now that they wouldn't otherwise have. So I think defining success is up to the individual, not so much a collective with data, which you can find. But, for me, if my loved one decides to stop taking their meds and they relapse, I'm still a success in the meaning of I'm not going to let this destroy me like I used to.
Sure.
And I'm going to do everything I can to help myself to help this person, but with boundaries and being healthy, because I can't lose myself in doing this. And it's not fair to me and my immediate family. So it's like, there's a line you draw and you have to have a strong support system. So when people say, well, how do you measure success? That is success.
Yeah.
How you learn from what you've been through and applying it for the next time. And hopefully there's no next time. But, it's tough to struggle. It's tough to keep sober. There's a real struggle that people go through. And COVID just exacerbated that. I mean, It's not like we wanted this, on top of an already existing problem.
Yeah, it did for me. I mean, that's when, mine was. I mean, I'll be coming up on 2 years, February 15th.
Congrats, by the way.
Thank you. But I'm going to mirror a lot of what you said and throw some things in there is that, somebody was like, oh, relapse part of your recovery. And I went, no, it's part of my disease of addiction. My recovery is a different thing. I wouldn't put them in the same frame. I relapsed because I had yet to exercise all the tools. But the success of the recovery is that I found connectivity that is maintained. That is so important. It is the opposite of addiction, is getting that connectivity. And I had people that were there for me, judgment free, because they've been through it too. Literally, my now sponsor, he just laughed and he's like, "Wait a minute, you're on the third beer and calling me?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, I can't believe I drove to the store. I don't even remember. I was sober, drove to the store, don't even remember buying it. Here I am calling you." He goes, "Man, you should have went out in style. I expected you to be sloppy, busting my balls." And, but he's like, "I'm proud of you, man." He's like, "God, I don't know how many times I relapsed." And, and he goes, "But this isn't a part of your recovery. This is part of your disease. And you got some step work, and we're going to keep it going. We're going to get you going." And I think the individual, the addict themselves, and the family need to understand that the quicker you can reconnect to that community and continually be involved and evolve your environment and those around you, the more successful you're going to be. Because at the end of the day, as the addict, it comes down to me. Am I going to do the work? Am I going to continue to live with rigorous honesty with myself, thus the rest of the world?
Absolutely. Amen. That's something that I just wish people knew, that life could be so different if they just apply themselves and try and get back up. You fall down, get back up. That's life. It's not 100% easy, but you've got to learn those skills that you learn. That's why everyone says treatment does work. It does work. Yes. It works if you apply yourself, because you get to learn from other professionals that live and breathe this every day and give you the tools to succeed and help you. And just let them guide you. Give it up. Just stop trying to control. Just surrender. Give it to God, your higher power, let the professionals guide you, align yourself with a good center, do the research. And if you have a strong support system and family, you're very lucky, and let them help you, reach out, and that's the big thing for me is when I told you earlier, the whole stigmatization, I've made it my life's work to work in PR in this field and work with as many media members and reporters and journalists as I can that'll shine a light. It's hard. I'm pitching day and day. Recovery month comes up, or if it's National Overdose Day, I'm pitching recovery speakers to share their story. And I think platforms like Good Morning America or the Today Show, or even local morning shows, they have a duty to cover this as well. And I really believe that they should cover more stories like this. And it's not just what dictates with advertisers. It's truly the goodwill of the community. And a lot of parents want to hear this. 1 in 5, that is huge audience. So any time that we have an opportunity to share stories of success and how did families cope and what they're struggling with is a success to me. And I love seeing more of that. We destigmatize it. People are more inclined to pick up the phone and call. And that is exactly what I'm trying to do. And I don't care who you call, just call. Well, actually, I do care who you call. Don't call someone don't call somebody who's not going to help you. You want to make sure it's a good place. But, give yourself the opportunity to get help and get it professionally help. When you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, it'll click. Yeah. And hopefully it'll click sooner than later. So you're not a statistic. And I really I want the families to be able to heal and live their lives again. I have such a soft spot for them, obviously personally too. But when I see the families heal and I see that they can accept things and learn to take care of themselves and put those boundaries up, it's a whole new world for them. And they can understand their addict, their loved one. They can understand it's a disease. They can understand a lot more than they ever did. Because in the beginning, you're angry. You might be guilty. Oh my God, I'm a terrible parent. I'm a terrible wife. What have I done? It has nothing to do with that. And once you see that through these workshops, through Al-Anon, through these group sessions and a strong family program, it's a whole nother world. Yeah. And I really hope everyone is able to have that gift. I hope Kanye is able to have this. Ye is able to have this gift too. And I hope that, we can see more people to help with life coaching and to they just need some guidance. Somebody that's not afraid to say to someone who's famous or, I'm not starstruck. I've worked with so many celebrities at this point. Okay.
Right.
You're doing this wrong. Like, you should try this.
Yeah.
And I don't really care what you say, because it's like your life, but I'm telling you, it'll be good. So I do try to wrangle some of the families that think they know better. And I'm like, okay, well, you can try. You can try this way, you can try the way that works. What are you going to
And you're spot on. I remember when we sat down and talked with Charlie Sheen, and I had asked him, I don't remember if it was the first time or the second time, and it was about the yes men. I was like, as someone from the outside who had a family member that my dad, he was doing very well in his industry, but he had a lot of other addicts and a lot of yes men around and a lot of people with the supplies. Like, from the outside, when everybody's laughing at Tiger Blood and everything else, I was pissed off that you had a group of people around you because the paycheck was still coming in just fine with it.
Well, it's almost like you don't know who your real friends are, right? So like Charlie Sheens of the world, the Yays of the world, you have so much money and so much fame. How do you see through to somebody who truly wants to just love your soul?
Yeah.
Regardless of the money and the fame and the movies and the music and all this bullshit in the world. It's like, I can only imagine them having a hard time with that identity and this other persona of who they know who they are, but then there's like this public image of who they are and all the money. Yeah. And it's like, you gotta be careful, because there's people trying to get that money and trying to, do deals with you and sign me or sign with me and do this. And the shark agents out there, I know, because I've been in that world.
Yes, you've warned me many a time.
And so they're coddled with yes all over the place. And when you're coddled so much and you're invincible and you can do anything and spend anything, it does make you crack one day. Right. And, I've seen this so many times. Yeah. I've seen celebrities lose everything. I've seen major business people and millionaires lose everything to addiction, lose everything to mental health, because they never had somebody a support system, a true support system, guide them to the right place. It's tough. I'm sure a lot of his handlers, maybe there are centers they know of, and there could be kickbacks. There could be, it's who you know. It's really not who you know. It's really what's good for the person.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it's not clear for them, the celebrities. But it was a great time working with you guys on the podcast, because we had Kelly Osbourne on there, Novak, Margera a few times. We had Charlie Sheen and Denise. They were wonderful interviews, and it was great working with all those guys. And you guys have an awesome platform, and I know it's only going to grow from here, God willing.
Oh, so. I hope. I'm still going. I haven't given up the fight. I know you saw that post the other day about the individual that reached out that they were about to use, and then found the interview with Edward Furlong. And boy,
yes, that was one of our first interviews we booked with Edward.
That was like a God shot. That it was like, I've been going through that phase and talking with my significant other about, do I stop doing this thing or whatever? And it's like, how do you give up? You're making a difference
You're making a difference directly or indirectly. It's amazing, because the more we share, the more we talk, the more we expose it. That's why I want the media to shine more lights on this, and that's my job. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to, every no I get, there's got to be a yes. So I'm going to hound the Good Morning Americas of the world. And I have tons of beautiful stories of people that can discuss their journey and what they've been through, and how the next person listening could pick up that phone. And that's what it's about. And podcasts like this. So yeah.
Well, Allison, it's time to switch to some fun. Are you ready to have some fun? Not that it's not
always
fun. You're always a joy. All right. Time for some random questions here.
Okay.
Where do I want to kick off? All right. This is a fun one, because you've worked around entertainment. So Allison decides to write her book finally, which I think would be fascinating, because I know more about your story than this podcast has time to do.
It'll come out soon, one day.
Okay.
I'm working on it.
So somebody,
an agent to pick up the film. It's based on a true story. It's incredible. You've heard it. So
no, you are the agent. What are you talking about?
Those days are over. I help. Yeah, I do manage a few celebrities, and I do book them for some deals. But I don't know. I'm not a full-time agent for sure. Too much stress I can't deal with. I'd rather have the agent book me the deals.
All right. I was say, I'll get you booking me for something. I don't know what, but so they decide to license it for a movie or a TV series. Who's playing you? Adult you.
Oh, it's a good one. Oh, gosh, I don't know. This is tough. I would have to say, oh my gosh, I'm totally having a brain fart with her name, but obviously she was Adriana in Sopranos, and she's such a great actor. I know I'm having what's wrong with me?
I'm going to use this technology of the internet here.
I'm so bad with names right now. I can't function. I only had one cup of coffee today. She was like my doppelganger in my 20s. So she looked like me. And I just love her feisty Italian side. And she would be good at playing my story.
Oh, who was it?
But this story takes place of younger me, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's
Gosh dang
it.
But Drea De Matteo.
Drea De Matteo. Yes, yeah. I knew that. Oh, I'm sorry, Drea. I'll never forget your name. I will never forget you. Huge fan. But yeah, she would play me if I had my way. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see the sassiness, the fire. Allison's a very passionate person. We're having this conversation, so it's not coming out as much, but it's one of the things I adore about you as a person. All right, you're stranded on a deserted island. You have one music artist's greatest hits and one movie. What are they?
Oof. Oh God, this is tough because there's so many good musicians and so many great movies. You know what? I absolutely think, so maybe the Godfather trilogy, because there's a lot in there.
Okay, I'll give you a trilogy. But if you had to pick just one, what Godfather movie?
I don't know. The first one, maybe. They're all so great. I don't know. It has
to be the first one.
Yeah. God.
Come on, let's be honest. 2 wasn't the best.
These are hard questions, right? And then
music artist greatest hits.
Okay, I love Mariah Carey growing up, So we'll go with her. Because she's got those octaves that just are amazing. Her voice, because I could just listen to her voice all the time. And she's got plenty of albums to choose from. So maybe pick the Christmas album, maybe.
All right.
Or Butterfly. I like that one.
Personal things you do for enrichment. What's one thing you just love to do?
I love to cook, although my husband says I'm good at it, but he could just be saying that.
I doubt that, because if I'm in Florida, I'm hitting
you're coming over for Sunday dinner.
I am. I've seen your cooking.
Cooking and ballroom dancing, believe it or not. I was a dancer growing up and a competitive gymnast. So I went back to my roots, from many, many years ago. And I started to do ballroom dancing, and I love it. It's so amazing. It's just so stress-free. You can be beginner or advanced. Just find a local studio and just learn. It's great. I do that. Yeah. Dancing and cooking. Very therapeutic for me.
I'll be darned. Does the husband get out there on the dance floor with you?
Not really, but sometimes depends, if we're at a wedding, you might feel like, okay, everyone's dancing, I'll dance. He's actually good, but not like on the regular. Sometimes I gotta force him to come on the dance floor with me.
Sure. Last book you read?
Actually, I have been reading the Torah. I read the Torah every night, and I read the Old Testament and the New Testament. So I've been reading the Torah. I've been reading 52 Weeks Bible Study. But actual book, God, it's been a while. I actually read a autobiography on Benjamin Franklin in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So I read a lot of nonfiction. That's kind of my thing. And I try to read at least 20 minutes a night, just to get off social media, stop scrolling, and just read something like real and something I can just zone out with.
Yeah, I can't do social media at night or in the morning anymore. I've made myself a promise, because now I manage like 4 different accounts. It's like, nope, I will get this time, get my head right, and get through it. That's so you're very with your faith. Was your mom really God, what's an Orthodox Jew, or was it a little bit looser? And are you find a lot of sense of self there?
I actually, so we were never religious. My grandmother was Orthodox, and she came from Russia. And then,
oh, wow.
Yeah, part of her family is also from Kiev, Ukraine. So they came from that area. And then they immigrated here before World War II and just missed the Holocaust. So thank God they were here. They were Orthodox, like separate ovens, can't mix dairy and meat, kosher, held the Shabbat every Friday and Saturday. And then my mom, Jersey girl, they came from Russia to Jersey, and she ended up falling in love with my dad. It was dark Italian, Roman Catholic. And she was like the first of the family to do that. So it was like, oh my God, oy vey, what are we doing? My grandmother was like, I could vote. But then, and then obviously, my dad, he's just a wonderful person, and the families took him in, and we were raised Jewish. My father was always enamored by the Jewish faith. So when he was raised in a Catholic school all through his life. He grew up in West Virginia. They immigrated from Italy and started working in the coal mining industry. And that's where my grandfather were working, the only job that they could get, Great Depression, and just happened to be West Virginia. And this like country boy / Italian, sweeps my Jersey Jewish mother off her feet. And that's what happened. But they raised me however we kind of wanted to be, as long as you're a good person and, you believe in doing the right thing. My dad and my mother weren't very religious. They kind of just dropped off, right, from what they grew up with. But then I started to incorporating Judaism back into my life recently. I've always been Jewish and aligned with Judaism, but I have such a deep love for both Judeo-Christian values and learning about Christianity and Jesus. And there's just a lot of mysticism around that. And I won't go into it too much, but I've found myself becoming more messianic and reading both the old and the new. And I think it's just so great, even for Christians, and close friends of mine are Christian, their roots are Jewish. And to go back and just to learn that, there's so much in the Old Testament, from how we structure our laws and legislation and how we work as a society. And there's fundamental laws that are so beautiful and universally known, and in all parts of the world. And I think that it's such a great thing to have those commandments and to try to do your best with that, it's hard. We're human.
Yeah.
It's hard. But I always pray, like, God, just give me the strength to get through today. If I'm going through something, wipe it out of my path, keep me on the righteous path. I just want to do the right thing. And it's not easy, but yeah, I've been more in tune with my faith. My mother, we celebrate Hanukkah with her. We have Christmas with my dad, but it's just interesting, like growing up with both. I kind of didn't know, like, well, I guess we have the Christmas tree and Hanukkah, but people at school would be like, well, you can only be one, and I'm like, no, I can't. So I believe in God, and I believe in doing the right thing. And that's why, when I hear remarks like what Kanye says, it does make me upset. And I do believe there's consequences to that, but we can forgive and we can educate. And I mean, I'd love to have Ye, if he ever wanted to come to a Shabbat dinner, I can show him a couple of things in his history, that he has Jewish roots, and, he's a follower of Jesus. So Jesus practiced the laws of Moses, and Jesus is Jewish, and he held the Sabbath, and he was proud to be. And there's a lot of controversy with the times of Jesus, and I've been studying it and everything, and it's really amazing. So I just learned to love everyone, although there are people I want to shake on a daily basis. But I love them.
Me both, my friend.
But that's okay, because it makes us who we are. And that's kind of how I grew up, and just loving one another and believing in what you want to believe.
Yeah, I had the blessing of, we had a friend when I was in probably junior college, I believe it's junior college. Anyway, her family had moved from New York, and just felt very isolated in her Jewish faith. So, the group of us was like, okay, well, what's Yom Kippur about? What's what are all these things? And so we celebrated with her. So, and then she did, Christmas and stuff with us. So it was kind of cool to just,
it's like a double blessing, right?
Yeah.
It's like you have Christmas, you have Hanukkah. If you want to get baptized, you want to have bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, it's like another blessing. And I think it's great.
Heck, while you're at it, I've gone to Native American, because I have a lot of Native American blood. I've gone to a ceremony before. Very empowering, very enlightening, very beautiful, so it's like, this sticking to this one thing, I one of my favorite, I'm a big autobiography person, was Bruce Lee's Be Water. It's like, be fluid. We can move through things. We can remold and shape ourselves and take in new experiences. And anyways, I can go on and on and on and on and on. But this is about you. My friend, if you could just leave, the last statement here, so to speak. What was it, Jerry Springer? The last words. It's like this shitty show, and then here it is, this beautiful thing. He would say it at the end, whereas this is the opposite. Beautiful show. We're going to leave you with something beautiful. Just from your own personal experience and your own struggles and the struggle of loved ones, that you would just want to lend to anyone that's listening.
I would just say, connect with your higher power and know that God will get you through it. Even if you're not a religious person, you can always seek God, seek a higher power. We are so small in this vast, vast universe, that there is a creator. And whether it's nature, whether you believe in God, a higher power, whoever, just know that, connect with that higher power, and just know that you don't have to get yourself out from under it. Rely on that higher power, believe, have faith, trust yourself, forgive yourself, and just live your life every day to the fullest.
Yeah. I love you, my friend. You're a beautiful person. This has been a real pleasure.
Love you too, Jason.
This is the Knockin Doorz Down podcast, featuring celebrities, experts, and everyday people who have overcome adversities, including addiction, mental health, and trauma, to live purposeful lives. And that's what Knockin Doorz Down is all about.
This podcast contains the views and opinions of the Knockin Doorz Down hosts and their guests to the show. The content here should not be taken as medical advice. The content here is for informational purposes only. And because each person is sharing their unique perspective, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast and website are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. Privacy is of the utmost importance to us. For those wishing anonymity, people, places, and scenarios mentioned in the podcast have been changed to protect confidentiality at the request of certain guests. This website or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or website. In no way does listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content establish a doctor-patient relationship. If you find any errors in any of the content of this podcast or blogs, please send a message through the contact page. This podcast is owned by KDD Media Company.